Good morning, family, and welcome to another episode of Congo Unfiltered. We're live right now. It's 11:07 Pacific time, and I'm your host, Gaëtan-Dauphin Nzowo. And today we're going to dive into a question that really lifted, I would say, the conversation across Africa and the diaspora this week. Why did South Africa say that Congo is selling out Africa? And that's not really a small accusation, I think. I think that's uh, somehow true statement. That's probably what we're going to be diving today. And it's not a casual statement either. And the phrase attaches identity, sovereignty, and Pan African unity, and also the harsh reality that the Congo sits on minerals that the world is fighting over. So if you have seen the headlines and the clips and the posts, the memes, um, stay with me because today we're going to do what we always do on Congo Unfiltered. We are going to kind of like slow down, separate emotion from analysis, and name real power dynamics, and bring it back to what matters the most. So, what changes for Congolese people on the ground? Does violence stop? Do people regain lands? Do um, the displaced families go home? Does the exploitation end? Does sovereignty improve? And to help us do that, I'll be joined today by one of the most consistent voices, I would say, in the Congo for decades, Friends of the Congo Executive Director, um, Maurice Carney. Maurice, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great. Thanks, Gaëtan. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. But
Excellent.
before we jump in, folks, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can hit like, subscribes, and share this with somebody who keeps asking you what's really going on in the Congo. And if you are on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, like, share, follow, repost this, and let's grow that audience that actually want truth and not propaganda. So, in the comment section, for those who are really tacky when it comes to like tag posting or commenting, uh, drop where you're watching this from: Kinshasa, Texas, Goma, Occupy Bukavu, Johannesburg, Brussels, Canada. So we want to really know where you're watching this from. So today topic can really create a false binary, because some people say that South Africa is right? That Congo is selling out, and others will say that South Africa should mind its own business, right? And I'm pretty sure that Tshisekedi's regime, folks close to the power, excuse me, will be saying that, but that's really too shallow, I would say. We can hold two ideas at the same time. So it's true that Africa needs regional solidarity and stability and the collective bargaining power on minerals. And also, Congo has a right to seek partnerships, but that partnerships must be, I'll say, transparent, enforce peace, and also serve the people. Um, so today, I think the main question for today's conversation is this about Pan African principle or about interest, and perhaps a combination of both, right? So we're gonna kind of like define the accusation here, because when someone says the Congo is selling out Africa, it usually means that one or more of these things, that giving away bargaining power, and Africa does have leverage because the world needs our resources. But Africa loses leverage when countries negotiate separately because outsider can do divide and sign, I guess, right? So some African interpret Congo's US deal as weakening the collective bargaining. But the second meaning is that the piece is being used here as a wrapper for extraction. We have been saying that for months, for years, for decades, and that people have watched peace agreements after peace agreements come and go. And they have watched rebels rebrand AFDL, CNDP, RCD, M23, They've watched diplomats celebrate. While the Congolese civilians continue to bury their loved ones. So if a deal is presented as peace and prosperity, but the violence continues, people start, you know, asking some question. They are start saying that this isn't peace, this is business. And the third point, or the third meaning, is really that sovereignty is being traded for access to minerals, access to resources. This is the most, I would say, controversial part, that the fear that Congo is being asked to change rules and provide preferential access to American citizens, American person, or restructure mining governance while the security remains really fragile. And obviously, and that's the thing that we have been seeing for decades, that accountability here remains absent. So under the fourth and the last meeting is that Congo is becoming the supply zone without industrial development. And we've seen images from Kinshasa right now, flooding, and the roads that are really in poor condition. And the poverty continues to exacerbate the already critical or severe condition, living economic condition of the people. So this is really deeper than the economic critique. I believe that if Congo export raw materials and import finished goods forever, and that's really not sovereignty, that that a colonial economic structure, right, with modern branding, that is a colonial economic structure with modern branding. So when we hear selling out, I think our first job is to ask, selling what exactly? Minerals, leverage, policy, autonomy, or long-term sovereignty? And now to clarify, um, when people said, and I'm going to bring that to you, Brother Maurice, when people say Washington Accord, what do they really mean when they talk about the Washington Accord?
Yeah, that's Gaëtan, it's a simple question, but it's a really, really important question. And that's one of the questions that we've tried to clarify, because not everyone is clear about the Washington Accords, right?
Mm-hmm.
So clarity around Washington Accords is paramount, because if you're not clear about the Washington Accords, then you're not really going to understand everything that comes after, and the significance of what is transpiring in the Congo, right? But being decided in Washington. Decisions are being made in Washington. Impact is being felt in the Congo. So it's really important to understand that dynamic as well. You know, we often refer to Lumumba's, famous quote in his letter about where Congo's history would be written. He said it wouldn't be written in Brussels or Paris or Washington, but the moment that we're in right now, Congo's history is being written in Washington. Notice it's the Washington Accords. It's not the Kinshasa Accords. It's not the Kisangani Accords. It's not the Lubumbashi Accords. It's the Washington Accords. That means the future of the Congo is being determined in Washington, right? So it's vital that we understand that right now. So that being said, the Washington Accords is a specific agreement that was signed on June 27th, 2025, right? That's a product of the Declaration of Principles that was signed on April 2025 between the foreign ministers of the DRC and Rwanda, right? Rwanda captured, and the M23 soldiers captured the city of Goma and Bukavu and other territories in the east of Congo in February 2025. So the president of the DRC, observing the international landscape, latched on to the idea that, okay, Rwanda has captured our territory. So we're going to reach out to President Trump in a very intentional way to offer a minerals for security deal, right? And President Tshisekedi did this after observing what had happened between President Zelensky of Ukraine and President Trump, where President Trump was pressuring Zelensky to cough up some minerals in order to get expanded U.S. security, right, to combat Russia. So Tshisekedi rushed in and said, hey, we can offer you minerals if you offer us security. Before that, there were like a plethora of lobbying groups trying to lobby the United States government to engage with President Tshisekedi. Lobbying groups even coming from within the Tshisekedi government, right? So when President Trump responded positively to Tshisekedi's outreach, he shut down all the lobbying efforts. In fact, he prevented his ministers from leaving the country. He's like, okay, the presidency is the singular route in which we're going to be dealing with the United States, not the lobbyists, Jacqueline lobbyists or another kind of lobbyists, but presidency. And that triggered a process that led to an agreement around Declaration of Principles that was signed in April of 2025. And the Declaration of Principles that was signed in April of 2025 laid the foundation, right, for the signing of an accord, an agreement that was done on June 27th in Washington, D.C., under the auspices of the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the Senior Advisor for Africa and the Middle East, Massad Boulos, and then culminating in a White House ceremony on June 27th, 2025. That's the peace accord. That's where you had articles that laid out what steps are to be taken by the Rwandan government and by the Congolese government in order to lead towards peace, right? And you recall we did an assessment of that peace accord, and it's atrocious, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Denis Mukwege, the Congolese Nobel Peace Prize laureate, wrote an exquisite piece breaking down the fundamental flaws of that peace agreement. And during the White House ceremony, President Trump said, we're going to be calling this the Washington Accord, right? And some of the elements we've already discussed here, that was just really horrible. It lacked any kind of accountability, any kind of justice. Rwandan soldiers were not demanded to leave the Congo, as was the case in a unanimous resolution that was passed in February of 2025 by the United Nations Security Council, 15-0, that called on Rwandan soldiers to leave Congolese territory immediately without any preconditions, sever its ties with the M23, enter into a ceasefire, and then also create a humanitarian corridor for people for humanitarian aid to get into Goma and to the east of Congo. So what we were saying is like, this is insane. Why would you, jettison what the whole world is saying needs to be done for Rwandan soldiers to leave Congolese territory? Why not rally behind that UN resolution instead of going and signing a Washington Accord that barely mentioned the M23, that imposed conditions on the Congolese government, according to the Rwandan foreign minister, for Congo to dismantle the FDLR, before Rwandan soldiers leave the territory. And then describe Rwanda's aggression and war and violation of international law and the territorial integrity of the Congo, describe it throughout the document as defensive measures, right? When nearly 10,000 Congolese were killed, right? Hundreds of Congolese women burned alive and raped as a result of the invasion and occupation. And then hundreds of thousands of Congolese internally displaced on top of the 7 million that was already displaced. And then you describe those as defensive measures. And then the Congolese government signs on to that. And then they don't even deal with the M23 matter in the Washington Accord. What they say is the M23 should be, it's a separate process called the Doha process, where the Congolese government now has to enter into talks in Qatar to address the M23. So the Washington Accord separates, right, the M23 from Rwanda, imposes on the Congolese government the demand to pursue and dismantle the FDLR. All this time, while the bulk of the FDLR, the Democratic Forces for Liberation of Rwanda, are found in the territory that's occupied by Rwanda and M23. So it was just like an insane agreement. That's the Washington Accord. And on top of that, Gaëtan, the illicit minerals that Rwanda has been taken out of the Congo, where the World Bank says that when in 2022, when the first occupation started, Rwanda was exporting a little over $300 million worth of gold, right, on its export books. By 2025, Rwanda had been exporting up to, I think they said over $1 billion or $2 billion worth of gold, or $1.2 billion worth of gold. So we see how lucrative the occupation has been for Rwanda, right? Even the United Nations Economic Council said in the first 6 months of 2025 under the occupation, the exports of coltan coming out of Rwanda increased some 200%. So the minerals were being taken out illicitly, right? So what the Washington Accord says, there's Article 6 of the Washington Accord, Regional Economic Integration Framework. Says now that Rwanda and the DRC should share its minerals, should have a sort of a trade and open up the markets where the minerals in the Congo can be processed and refined in Rwanda, and then U.S. investments will come in to back the efforts, right, around minerals, energy, a bunch of others. So in essence, Rwanda is being rewarded not only diplomatically and politically for violation of international law, for violating the territorial integrity of the DRC, right? But now it's it's set up to get economic benefits, investments and all. So that's the Washington Accord. That's what was signed on June 27th, right? In Washington, D.C. You have the Washington Accords, you have the Doha peace talks, all of this happening outside of the Congo, outside of Africa, right? So after the Washington Accords, right, the signing of the Washington Accords, by the way, within months of the signing of the Washington Accords, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, United Nations groups of experts all documented that post-signing, there is increase in displacement, targeted assassinations, recruitment of children into militia groups, summary executions, right? All taking place after the signing of this Washington Agreement, right? So you could tell it didn't address any kind of the realities on the ground in terms of the people who are living on an occupation. So after the signing of the Washington Accord on June 27th, then there were talks about a minerals for security deal, an economic deal that's supposed to be signed. But nobody knew what it was about. Here in Washington, we spoke to members of Congress, and they couldn't talk about it. They said, well, Masad Boulos is coming to give us a briefing as members of Congress, but the briefing is classified, right? So the administration was briefing Congress, but Congress couldn't say anything about it because they're only briefing Congress in a classified environment. So everyone's trying to find out what this minerals for security deal is all about. So by the time we get to late November, the things started to bubble up again where, okay, it said definitely the foreign ministers signed an agreement in June. And now we're going to have the presidents of the DRC and of Rwanda come to Washington for a White House meeting, a White House signing agreement, right? And it had been rumored and, put out there for months. So we weren't sure if it's actually going to happen. But then by the time we get to the first week of December, we saw that it was real. It's going to be happening on December 4th in Washington, D.C. Now, Gaëtan, the day before, December 3rd, I think it was December 3rd, maybe December 2nd. I think it was December 2nd or 3rd. We finally get word as to what this minerals for security agreement is about. The spokesperson for the Congolese government, I think it's Tina Salamas, is that their full name?
Yeah.
She spoke to the press in Washington. Now, mind you, people in Congo do not know anything about
this. They don't know anything.
Right? People in Washington, D.C. knew more and heard more from the Congolese government than anybody inside of the Congo, including the elected parliamentarians. They knew nothing. They couldn't tell you anything about this, right? The journalists in Washington were lined up. The Congolese government with the spokesperson and, Tina and Patrick Muyaya was there as well. And it was then a day or two in December, before December 4th, that they revealed we have this 17-article agreement, strategic agreement with the United States, right? Now, when they lay that out, we have this 17-article agreement with the United States. We, at the time, we're wondering, well, is it signed already? Is it under discussion? Is it, is it something that's actually going to happen? 17 articles and strategic minerals deal with the United States? And on December 4th, when President Kagame and President Tshisekedi were at the White House, even journalists were hitting us up, what's this deal about? What's going on? And we're like, we don't know. We don't know if it's actually an agreement or it's a proposal. We just had no idea. So they came out and they said they released it. 17 articles, a strategic partnership between the United States and the Democratic Republic of Congo, right? And there was a ceremony at the newly named Trump Institute for Peace, where you had President Tshisekedi, President Kagame, and then you had a number of other African presidents, right? You had, President Ruto from Kenya.
No red carpet, by the way.
From Angola. You just had, the Africans were in Washington.
There was no red carpet for them.
Perfect neo-colonial setup, right?
Yes.
These African presidents come to Washington and, pay fealty to Donald Trump, right? So when that happened now, it was fascinating. There were 4 agreements signed and reported on that day. Right, 4 agreements, really important for people to understand. 4 agreements were signed on that day. One was really a short one, was a consummation of the Washington Accord, right? The Washington Accord has already been signed on June 27th, 2025. But there was like a 10-point or something, just really reaffirming what was signed on June 27th. So remember, the Washington Accord was a done deal back in June. On June 27th, between the foreign ministers. On December 4th, really it's just the presidents that signed the Washington Accord, right? The foreign ministers signed it on June 27th. On December 4th, same agreement, no fundamental changes. The presidents of Rwanda and the DRC signed the Washington Accord, right? Just consummated it, right? That's one, it's really important. 2, in the Washington Accord, I mentioned to you, there's Article 6, Regional Economic Integration Framework. So Article 6 of the Washington Accord was also signed. It was a separate agreement that was consummated on December 4th. That talks about the regional economic integration between Rwanda, DRC, U.S. investments coming in. That's a second. A third agreement that was signed was a bilateral agreement between Rwanda and the United States that dealt with health, where the United States was going to be providing some up to $200 million for data collection and support of Rwanda's health sector. That was a third agreement that was signed on December 4th. Now, the most consequential and critical deal that was signed on December 4th was a strategic partnership agreement between the DRC and the United States. Now, the core and the essence of the strategic partnership agreement, and it states it in the agreement, is to secure critical mineral supply chain for United States national security, for the U.S. defense and commercial sectors. That is the essence of the 17-article strategic partnership agreement. Secure the critical mineral supply chain of the United States of America for its defense and commercial sectors. And at the same time, contain China and China's expansion in the mineral sector in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. That is the essence of the strategic partnership agreement between the United States and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So when the Minister of Mines of South Africa says that the DRC is selling out, that's what he's saying. He's saying that based on the elements of that agreement, right? Because in order to secure the U.S.'s critical mineral supply chain, the DRC has to do a number of things. U.S. really doesn't have to do much. The DRC has to do a number of things. Within 30 days, submit a list of minerals, right? That's going to be put in what they call strategic asset reserve. Now, strategic asset reserve, that's for the United States. That's not for Congo, right? But the Congolese have to submit a list of minerals that's going to be in the strategic asset reserve. That's within the first 30 days, which, according to Bloomberg News, the Congolese government has already done. Another element is
even including region like mining places area like Rubaya, which is not even under Congolese control. So it will be really interesting.
Deal with Rubaya a little later. I'm not sure Rubaya was put in that list. You know, I haven't seen the list. I'm not sure if Rubaya was one of them was put in.
I think it was reported, and I've seen people discussing. They said that Rubaya was included, and that even raised some concern because people were like, the Congolese government doesn't even control Rubaya. Why would he?
Yeah, I've seen Bloomberg publish an article say the Congolese government is putting it up, for offer, but I'm not sure if it's a part of the strategic asset reserve. I'm not sure. It may be.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But I do know the Congolese government. Bloomberg just reported on that, but I'm not sure. I haven't seen the list, so I don't know. But so that's one within 30 days. Then the strategic asset reserve is going to be overseen by a joint steering committee made up of 10 people, 5 Congolese, 5 DRC. So the minerals, strategic minerals now, Congo's minerals are no longer the sole purview of the Congolese government. They're going to be overseen by the United States and the DRC. Another demand that's in there is that on a quarterly basis, the Congolese government has to report to the U.S. ambassador in Kinshasa. If there are any changes in their fiscal policies, they have to provide a quarterly report. Anything that deals with the strategic asset reserve has to be brought to the board, the joint committee, for discussion to arrive at consensus. United States has the first right of refusal for any projects around mining that's taking place in the Congo. The United States and its allies have the first right of refusal. Right. In addition to that, the agreement also says that the United States can invest in minority stakes that the Congolese government is already engaged in, right? So the Congolese government has agreements with China. China controls about 80% of the copper cobalt sector. One of the main projects is the Tenke-Fungurume China mining site, which used to be U.S. Concession.
They
Freeport
sold it.
McMoran had Tenke-Fungurume. They ran into debt issues, and they sold it to the Chinese in
And I think
2017, right?
And I think Biden's son was involved. President Biden's
Biden's
son was
son is a part of
involved
a company that was involved in negotiating that $2 billion plus deal between the
to
Chinese
China,
and the US,
which is
right?
insane. Yes.
So China controls, it's run by China Molybdenum, right? They have 80% of Tenke-Fungurume. Gécamine, representing the Congolese government, has 20%. Now, the US investors can come and invest in that 20%, which they've already started doing, where as a part of the deal, the Congolese government is sending, they say they're sending 100,000 tons of copper to the United States, right? And that comes out of the Tenke-Fungurume deal. So China can't do that. China cannot invest in anything that the Congo has with the United States, right? In fact, China cannot expand in any way because of what the Congolese are doing. They're gathering the minerals, they're mapping it, exploring it, and they're putting it in the strategic asset reserve, which is the purview of the United States, right? Of this, the United States get the first right of refusal on this. So these are some of the reasons why the South Africans are saying, "What in the world are you're selling out?" Right? These are some of the reasons they say you're selling out. Now, it's just really interesting. The strategic partnership agreement calls for the U.S. and the companies and the Congolese to do prospecting, exploring, right? And they're going to use artificial intelligence in order to do that. And so what that means is that they have to collect data, right, in order to use the artificial intelligence to do that. So one of the best sources for data are the Belgians, because the Belgians colonized the Congo. They know the Congo. They have maps, right? And they have maps in their museum in Tavira, in Belgium. So the U.S. company, Cobalt in particular, is going to Belgium and said, "Hey, give us the maps because we're going to make it a part of our agreement with the government, so that we can put the maps and everything together and sell, bring it to U.S. investors, so U.S. investors can, see what they're going to be investing in, right?" So, I mean, it's just crazy, Gaëtan. So the Congolese government is saying, "Yeah, give them the maps," because they have signed an agreement with Cobalt and with the United States. And the Belgians are saying, "No, this map we're not going to give it to a private company. This is a public domain, and we're still digitizing it." So we've seen a lot of folks online. They say, "Well, in this instance, we got to agree with the Belgians. I know they're the former colonial masters, but we got to agree."
A lot of drama, because it seems like the public debate here is basically a DRC entering a framework where mineral access is tied to a peace architecture. And all of that is happening while Rwanda and the M23 essentially remain central to the war economy. They ask, and that was as recently, Rwanda to withdraw his troops, or the M23 or AFC, 75 kilometers from Uvira, right? But they still are expected to remain in the Congo. Rwanda is still expected to control Congolese territory, because really, when you talk about peace, any peace or minerals framework is only as good as its enforcement, and they have nothing. And then you mentioned that they have nothing consistent to essentially enforce that and make sure that Rwanda actually withdraw its troops. And talking about the South African minister, I think is Gwede Mantashi. I can't remember. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his word correctly. When he's essentially accusing Congo of selling Africa. And I really want to know your perspective from Friends of the Congo perspective. Do you think that critique is fair, or is really Congo simply trying to diversify partnership? Because we've heard that, folks that are Congolese or close to the current regime, to President Tshisekedi. They say that Congo has a right to deal with whoever they want. And I've invited for a few people, I've talked to people that think that that US deal is going to bring about peace in the Congo. So my question to you is that critique fair? Or is Congo simply trying to diversify partnerships in a world that frankly has already been extracting from Congo through other channels?
Yeah, the statement by Gaëtan-Dauphin, the mining minister of South Africa, it's also important to lay out where he made the statement. He made it at the Mining Indaba in South Africa, annual mining conference, and we will talk about that in a little bit. But I wanted to, Gaëtan, deal with this notion of, I've seen folks online say, well, they can have all the minerals as long as we get peace, right? Say Rwanda is stealing the minerals anyways, so better to give it to the United States and we get peace. So to arrive at that conclusion, you have to have a premise, right? A presupposition. You're presuming that whatever you do, the government is doing with Congo's minerals, it's going to bring peace. It's not minerals that's going to bring peace to the Congo. It's not Donald Trump that's going to bring peace to the Congo. It's not Washington that's going to bring peace to the Congo. So the framing from the outset is fundamentally flawed, right? Even when we talk about critical minerals, what's embedded in critical minerals, Gaëtan, the reason why they're called critical minerals? Because they're critical to the empire. They're critical to the West. They're not necessarily critical to the Congo, right? They're critical to the U.S. defense, U.S. energy, U.S. commercial sector, right? It's not a scientific term. It's a public policy term. And it's critical to U.S. national security interests. And it's so important for Congolese and Africans to understand that. We're talking about U.S. national security interests. We're not talking about the industrialization or development of Congo or Africa. That's not the priority, right? The International Finance Development Corporation, they call it DFC, within the next day, on December 5th, they issued a press release saying that we're going to unleash, we're going to letter of interest for $1 billion, right? To deal with the minerals and infrastructure sector in the Congo, because this isn't just a minerals deal, it's also an infrastructure deal, right? Because the minerals, like you have the copper and the cobalt, the lithium, the manganese, and all of that. But you have to get that out of the Congo, right? They're not refining and processing that in the Congo, right? You have to get it out in what they call the Atlantic strategy. So they have the Lobito corridor that's going to be shipping the minerals out from Kolwezi right out to Lobito in Angola, right? So it can get out to the Atlantic, which is also folds into the geostrategic battle. The geostrategic battle between China and the West in the Congo is not just about minerals. It's also about infrastructure. So you have the Tazara rail line that runs from Tanzania into Zambia and out into the Indian Ocean, where the Chinese just invested $1.4 billion to have minerals going out to the Indian Ocean. So you have an Indian Ocean strategy by the Chinese, and you have Atlantic strategy by the United States. So that, and within the agreement, it says that there are certain quotas that have to be met. Like there's quota of manganese that has to be shipped out on that rail line, quotas of copper, quotas of cobalt. And the agreement also calls for the extension of the Lobito corridor down deeper into the copper belt to Sakania, right? So you're on mute.
Sorry, what happened if those quotas are not met?
I'm sorry?
What happened if the quotas are not met? Because there's
quotas. It doesn't say what happens if the quotas are not met. However, The point I'm making, though, the main point, this is not a peace deal. This is a deal to secure, and we're gonna have to say it ad nauseum, ad infinitum. This is a deal to secure the critical minerals supply chain for U.S. defense, energy, and commercial sector. This is what it's about. It's not anything about it delivering peace. Is you're making a presupposition. You're saying that, like the Trump administration is saying, well, their argument is, if we have people doing business and making money, they're not going to be fighting, right? That's the essence of it. So for Congolese who have lost millions of lives, are you going to hang, the peace and stability on that presupposition, right?
Let me jump in and ask you this, because you said that this is not a peace deal, but he has been portrayed as a peace deal. So, but what happened when peace?
It certainly has been. If the peace deal, and it wouldn't be a stretch, Gaëtan, to say peace has been used as a cover for the plunder of the Congo.
Yes, and my question to you is, what happens when peace is conditional on investment access, particularly in the case of the Congo?
I don't even know if I say it. I don't even know if you say it's conditional. I don't even know if I can even go far and make that argument. Mm-hmm. Because then if you're saying it's conditional, you're saying, well, if we meet this condition, right, mm-hmm. of selling off the minerals, then we're going to get peace. What we're arguing is that's not even going to happen. That's not even like in the realm of possibilities, right? The Oakland Institute published a really good piece, called, Shafted. The critical minerals, dealing with critical minerals in the in the DRC. Shafted, the scramble for critical minerals in the DRC. I highly recommend that people at the Oakland Institute. Maybe I can share a link, Gaëtan. You can share it with folks where they can access that. So what I'm sharing is, for us, for Friends of the Congo, for Congolese civil society, we have to challenge the premise underlying all of this, like peel it back, to say, well, is this how you arrive at peace, by selling off all your minerals? Really? I mean, you have to buy into that, right? Now, thankfully, there are a bunch of Congolese civil society leaders, lawyers, who are saying, we're not buying into that. They're not even getting to that stage, Gaëtan. They're saying, okay, we look at this agreement, right? And based on what's written in this agreement, it violates our constitution. Let's take it to the Constitutional Court, which they filed in January, to have the Constitutional Court look at this, right? This is what a group of courageous lawyers in the Congo have done. Associated Press has reported on it. Our Radio France International reported on it. Others reported on it. They said, these lawyers, civil society leaders, taking it to the court, right? Because, mind you, the Congolese parliament hasn't even dealt with this. They didn't deal with the Washington Accord that was signed on June 27th, and they haven't dealt with any of the agreements that were signed on December 4th. So the civil society whose name these deals are being signed in, they're challenging. And the lawyers reported to you, Gaëtan, which you were struck, right? They reported that, okay, the Constitutional Court is supposed to respond to the case within 8 days, but they haven't responded. It's beyond 8 days and they haven't responded, right? They've contacted us, that's what the lawyers said, but they haven't responded. And when they contacted us, they said one of the reasons for the delay is because the U.S. Embassy hasn't responded to the case. We've gone to the U.S. Embassy 3 times, right?
The Constitution.
You can't make this up, right?
Yeah.
3 times, and the U.S. hasn't responded. Can you imagine, Gaëtan? Just think about this. A group of attorneys in the United States, right, take a case to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the judges of the United States Supreme Court respond to the U.S. citizens who are attorneys. Well, I'm sorry, we haven't been able to move forward on your case because we went over there to on Connecticut Avenue to try and serve the embassy of the DRC, and they haven't responded to us. So we're we can't really move forward on this right now. Can you even imagine a scenario like that?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
you really have to put
unbelievable.
yourself there to try to get a sense of how preposterous that is, right? So that's so the point is and it's really important for people to understand that we're seeing resistance. That's one form of resistance from Congolese civil society, Congolese attorneys who say, so it's not just the minister of South Africa that's saying that the government is selling the people out, not just the current inhabitants of the Congo, but the future. You know, Monsignor Muteba said for 99 years, right? That's what he said. That this is a deal for 99. Now, 99 years is not anywhere in the agreement, right?
They're claiming the Catholic Church is claiming that there are annexed documents that the Congolese government hasn't published because
I
of
haven't
this.
seen it. I mean, it's all there. The Congolese government is hanging on to that, though, right? To say, well, okay, you're wrong in this wrong fact. This particular fact is not anywhere in the agreement, and the Congolese government is right. It's not in the agreement, not that we've read, but that's really not the most consequential part. You know, that's whether it's for 9 years or 99 years, it's a bad deal.
Bad, yeah.
It doesn't accrue to the benefit of the Congolese people, right? 9 or 99, it doesn't matter, right?
I want to talk about
say, Gaëtan, that if there is a dispute, if there's a dispute, they can take up to 5 years to resolve this dispute.
Yeah.
Right?
Essentially, the installation of the new government, essentially.
Yeah. So what we saw now, to your question around South Africa, the lawyers in Kinshasa are saying that the agreement also violates, I think they say, Article 217 of the DRC's constitution that talks about a Pan-African, pact that's being violated, right? So they brought that up. Now, when the South African mining minister raised the issue at the Mining Indaba, I was really surprised to see the response from the Congolese mining minister that Reuters published. They said, well, Congolese mining minister said, well, if this deal doesn't work out, we can seek other partners. Like, really? Is that what is that your response? Like, this deal is like moving. It's already moved up so far ahead. Monies have been disbursed. Committees have been set up. Lists have been submitted. Minerals have been committed to be shipped. So I was just really struck by Congolese mining minister's response. So, well, we can seek other partners. So, but what the South Africans are saying is entirely reasonable, in that the African countries around this, the strategic interests should be unified. They should come together first and function as a bloc, right, in dealing with the rest of the world, not hold themselves out to be picked off either by China, either Russia, the US. Like, Africa should be prioritized, and Congo is, as you know, is just indispensable to the future of the African continent. So when you have the heart of the continent that's going to in the process of being captured by the United States and its billionaire class, that has the implications not just for South Africa, but for the entire African continent. Because now, instead of Congo's riches, right, serving to develop the African continent, is now serving to secure the national strategic interests of the United States. That's really that's the dichotomy. Even though in the agreement they say they're going to add value locally, that's going to have an impact on some 600 million Africans, right? The fact that they even put that in the agreement, Gaëtan, lets you know the potential of the Congo. We're talking about about half of they're saying they're going to have an impact on half of the entire, population of the African continent. That's what they're saying in this agreement. I mean, folks don't really believe it, but what it says, it says to Congo, it should say to the, average Congolese, that's the value that we have. And you don't just willy-nilly sell it off. Now, why would Tshisekedi enter into a deal like this? Because it's in his personal political interest. It's in why would the 500-member parliament be silent on this? It's in their political interest. Those parliamentarians in Chesekedi that make, what do they make, $20,000 a month or something like that? Not counting the perks and all, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the average, the per capita income of the annual income of the Congo, $500+ right? 70 million people living on less than $2.15 a day, right? They're acting in their interest. They see this as a way, one, to stave off Rwanda, because the pressure is coming. Rwanda and M23, they captured, even after days after signing the deal, Rwanda and M23 captured Uvira, right? Uvira is like a stepping stone to Grand Katanga, right?
Yeah.
So the Tshisekedi administration was under threat. So securing their interests, not only Tshisekedi and his administration, but the political elite. Patrick Muyaya, he said it. He's like, folks are asking him, well, did the parliament look at this agreement? He said, well, we have 90% of the parliament on lock, right? They have the parliament on lock. They have the constitutional court on lock, locked down, right? So we don't even have to get their permission. We just moving with this, right? That's what they're saying. So their interest. Plus, I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone, to see that Tshisekedi does not plan to leave power in 2028 at the end of his mandate, right? So being in partnership with the United States, where Donald Trump said to Tshisekedi, like, you're a brave guy, right? You're our guy. They rolled out the red carpet for President Tshisekedi when he came to Washington in early February as a follow-up. The United States laid out its strategic mineral block, right? They're looking to set up. They invited some 54 countries to Washington in early February for the United States to set up what they call a critical minerals, trading bloc. And 7 countries from the African continent were invited. And of course, the DRC was the, prize, because they've already signed an agreement and they're flush with the minerals. So they're the president of the Congo was the toast of the town, right? Seeing members of Congress, seeing, platform with businesses at the prestigious National Prayer Club prayer breakfast. He got a platform to speak. Although Trump couldn't pronounce his name, he shouted him out. The president of the Congo. He didn't want Jimmy Kimmel going in on him again with another skit, right? So he just like, all right, we just leave his name alone.
I wanted to ask you, because that's really the elephant in the room, and you mentioned it, Rwanda and M23, Rwanda's M23. I'm just gonna say that, because no matter really how beautiful the documents are, and if Rwanda continues to control territory and civilians continue to suffer, then really the deal becomes like a public relation project, right? So why do peace, and the question to you is, why do peace frameworks keeps failing in the Congo for 3 decades now, in your experience?
I mean, the frameworks are failing because they're not taking into consideration the local realities. They're taking you can go all the way back, Lusaka Accord from 1998, the discussions in Sun City in 2001, Addis Ababa. They almost always take into consideration the elites, the political elites. Because what you'll notice, right, from peace accord to peace accord, following them, those political elites that have committed crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, you find them being rewarded with government posts. You find that the perpetrators, whether they're inside of the Congo or outside of the Congo, there's no accountability, no justice. And when there's no accountability and no justice, Gaëtan, impunity reigns, right? So these folks are being rewarded. Kagame's being rewarded. I'm sure you've read Museveni and Uganda. 47% of their export gains is from gold. That their Ugandan minister said, "Well, we don't know where it came from. We know it's not coming from our mines."
Yeah.
In Uganda, right? So whether it's Uganda getting the gold and Kagame getting the gold and the coltan, or the militia groups, leaders getting posts in government, if you run down the list of RCD Goma and RCD Kisangani, all of them, you'll find that these people wind up in government, right? That's where you get 1+4, right? That 1+4 wasn't a deal for civil society. It was a deal for those who were participating in the killing of Congolese. So it's very clear. From you just go from Lusaka right up to the Washington Accord, you find the consistent streams that these agreements are done in the interests of the political elites, those local elites in Kinshasa, and the regional elites in Kampala and Kigali, and then of course they're co-signed and endorsed by the global elites in Paris, Brussels, London, and Washington. Mm-hmm. So it's a tough. When we talk about those forces that are arrayed against the Congolese people, you just look at these agreements and these accords, and you see that. That's why we say, in Friends of the Congo, in the spirit of Lumumba, Lumumba said, the Congolese people will not be alone. Free and liberated people, every corner of the world, Africa, Asia, be by the side of the Congolese. So that's what we're doing, mobilizing to support the people on the front lines, because that's really where the change is going to come from. It's not going to come from the political elites, and it certainly isn't going to come from Washington, Doha, or anywhere else. So that when he said something as a Washington Accord, that's not going to deliver peace to. Yeah, if it says Washington, already right off the bat that's not going to deliver peace.
I want to go back to the Pan-African conversation, because that was very important when you mentioned the Article 217 of the Congolese Constitution that allows Congo to lose its sovereignty only if it is strengthening this Pan-African unity, right? And obviously the accord being signed is between the Congo and the United States, which obviously is not in Africa. So South Africa's critique, as we have now demonstrated, is valid, it is sincere, it is also strategic. Mm-hmm. And it is strategic, and he raised a critical question, is that how does Africa in that context build collective leverage on strategic minerals?
Before I answer that, Gaëtan, when you talk about peace, this is really fascinating, it's really struck me. We have enumerated all the agreements and accords that were signed in 2025, right?
Yeah.
And how they were signed to bring peace in the Congo, right? Mm-hmm. And how they were signed in Washington and in Doha, right? Within the past month, what is really interesting is that we've seen the Congolese president, Felix Tshisekedi, make trips to Congo, Brazzaville, make trips, to Luanda in Angola. I think he went to Togo as well. That this should be a sign for the people. If Washington was supposed to solve the problem, right, of peace, why is the president going to Brazzaville and to Luanda and to Lomé, right, to talk about peace? Wasn't it supposed to be addressed in Washington? So that's an indication for folks like, this path that they're on is not a path of peace. It's a path of a minerals grab. Now, with a continent, it's you have the blocks, like the continent. They have the 2063 plan, right? A part of it is Africa Free Trade Area, right, where it's supposed to break down the barriers that was set up by the colonial masters and provide increased trade, commerce, and even movement among Africans, right? But what we've seen is that these different leaders, they have their fiefdoms, and they're really locked into that. It is, I don't know, coming from the elites, their interests again are being served by the status quo, right? And if you compare, that the question you asked is really good, because if you compare how a Tshisekedi or a Kagame or even a Museveni function, right? You compare them, to how a Chiani of Niger, right, or a Goita, of Mali, or Traore of Burkina Faso function, then the answer is there with stark evidence, right? These, you see the model that's needed to respond to the question that you asked, Gaëtan, right? The model is there. If you look at the Alliance of Sahel States, that's what it looks like when you're on march to continental unity, right? So really the question is, what is it going to take? What is it going to take for the AES model to reach other parts of the African continent, right? And people should be really clear about this, because the AES model, contrary to popular belief, Gaëtan, is not a product of the heads of state. It's not a product necessarily of Chiani or Goita, or Traore. Right. It's a product of grassroots organizing, movement building among the masses of West Africans, challenging France-Afrique, challenging France's monopoly on the people's lives. So you have people, remember, I share with folks that before, Traore arrived in power, the Burkina Bay masses kicked out the head Negro in charge in West Africa at the time, Blaise Compaoré. He was serving France and the United States, and the people mobilized to kick him out. So there's that from the bottom up, right? You see this popular education, popular movement, grassroots mobilizing. So it's going to have to be a people's movement from the bottom up to create an environment where anybody who stands up and said they're representing the people, they're going to have to represent their interests, right? They're going to have to represent what the people want. And people want to benefit from their wealth. People want security, right? So I think it's a question of comparing that model, to other parts of the continent.
Yeah. Brother Maurice, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you, Gaëtan.
Yeah. So y'all folks, I think this is the part that we kind of like summarize what was discussed and what really is the take on, because you heard Brother Maurice, Friends of the Congo Executive Director, and it is really not a debate of being pro-American, anti-American, be Team Congo or Team America or Team South Africa. It's really, and that's what Congo Unfiltered is, and that's what Friends of the Congo has been doing. It's about the outcomes. It's about enforcement. It's about justice. It's about sovereignty. It's about the lives of the million of people that live and reside in the Congo, right? So about 7 things, or maybe a few things maybe to mention, that the selling out here is really immeasurable choices. That the Congolese government made a deliberate choice to sell the future of Congolese folks without the guarantee that peace was going to be provided, because we have seen a pattern, we have seen the past, and Brother Maurice articulated those past accorded, past agreements, and even until today, you cannot talk about peace in the Congo right now. Part of the Congo is still occupied. Congolese people are still being displaced. So a country sells out when it trades long-term sovereignty for short-term deals. And those deals, again, do not benefit the Congolese people. Those deals don't even serve its people. That can happen with the United States, with China, with Europe, with anyone. So the issue here is not necessarily the passport, it's not necessarily the nationality. The issue here is who benefits those deals. Not the Congo, not the Congolese people. Perhaps the Congolese elites, but not the common people. So Africa's biggest weakness has been fragmentation. And you see, you know, the Sahel Alliance, how they are organized. And Brother Moise said that they are organized from a grassroots work, not from an elite or individual standpoint. But why the African Union is almost absent when it comes to sitting down at the table and discuss the issue of the Congo. Why are they silent when the Congo is being occupied, when millions of Congolese people are being displaced? And this is the hard truth, that really when Africa negotiates separately, when corporations and powerful states can really pressure each country individually, being able to sign such a deal with the Congo without the inputs of the African Union, that's an issue, that's a danger, right? And that's why the Pan-African critique here matters. Because the nuance here is that you really can't demand Africa unity only when it benefits your own national interests. I don't think that's what Patrice Lumumba envisioned. He didn't support Ghana's struggle, South Africa struggled for his own personal interest. And Kwame Nkrumah did not support Lumumba for his own political gain, right? So unity here must be rooted in justice and not just a sort of like competition. So the third point is when you talk about peace for business, as we mentioned, that really can become a trap, and that has been the trap for Congo for decades. Promise peace in exchange for business, in exchange for investment, in exchange for critical minerals. And if peace here is tied to investment incentives, it really can create a system where literally like conflict reduce just enough to keep contract moving, right? That you're gonna have a war, you're gonna have mercenary moved in, even those accused of war crimes in Iraq. You're gonna have minerals, the supply chain continue to work and operate, minerals being shipped in the United States, but not solved enough to return land, right? And sorry for the background noise. So really in the Congo, the public here has seen this in movie either, right? That the Congolese people will not see their dignity being restored. The predation will not stop. The killing will not stop. But the minerals will continue to flow. Next year, we're going to have the new iPhones, the new Samsung. In a decade, we're going to have the PS6. All these technologies will continue to advance using Congolese minerals. But the Congolese people themselves will never know neither peace nor prosperity. So when Rwanda's M23 are not mentioned, are not held accountable, these are not sad details. Because if the framework here doesn't seriously handle the Rwanda reality, that Rwanda is occupying the Congo, the Rwandan government is violating international law, the Rwanda is involved in war crimes and crimes against humanity, that the Rwanda government is enlisting through the M23 child soldiers, then it will not deliver peace. And this is why Congolese people feel betrayed when we speak to folks on the ground, on the front line, because they are asked to accept integration while armed groups, the same that have raped the wives and the kids and and killed their family members to accept integration, while those armed groups are still dominating part of the land. And the minerals that we're talking about here is not just minerals, right? It's really leverage. It's really power. It is leverage because that's what the world needs. The world needs Congo's resources. So the question is the fundamental question that at Friends of the Congo we are asking: until when will the Congo remain a supply zone? When will the Congo become a decision maker? When will Congo be allowed to build industry? Or will Congo only allowed to export raw materials? Because when you reduce the Congo to some sort of commodity that they are only providing the resources and that we do not care about 100 million people living in that country, then you turn 100 million human beings into numbers that can be expendable, that can be framed as collateral damage. It's a war. Things happen in war. Then those numbers that I've been mentioning, 7 million people displaced, 5.6 million people who died since what, 1997? These are from 1997 to 2003, and these are the latest and the last time that they were counting bodies in the Congo, community of 2007. Then these will only remain statistics because we don't see the lives, we don't see the joy that those people brought. These are people who were born, who laughed, who ran, who got married, who, cried their loved one with vibrant music, with a vibrant culture. These are people. But you reduce them to that because you only need them to produce a certain amount of coltan, cobalt. You need them to extract those minerals and ship them to the United States, to the Europe, to the UAE. So the sovereignty that those people right now that are trapped in zones that are occupied, trapped even in territories under the Congolese government, but who has failed to provide for them, who has failed to provide security to them, to provide them with jobs, with a decent, I would say, healthcare system, with a proper education for the kids, with roads that will not have, I won't even say potholes, like literally holes. Then what happened to that population? What happened to those people? What are they left with? So when those deals to bring about peace supposedly are hidden, captured by the elite in power, then you cannot expect peace, let alone justice. But when these deals are public, when these deals are truly transparent, and when these deals, like Brother Maurice said, really take into consideration the aspiration of the Congolese people, the civil society, people can really fight for their interest. We will have a government that can really, truly fight for the interests of the people that are fighting for or representing. So the public needs a checklist. We need a checklist. I'll try to give you a checklist. This is what you can ask any official supporting the major minerals plus security framework. Are the agreement public? Are the agreements even known by the constituent? Who verifies the security commitments? What are the consequences for violations? What local value addition is guaranteed? And what anti-smuggling enforcement exists, right? What, I don't know, what community protection exists in mining zones? What are the changes for displaced people, for the Congolese people, for the civilians? And if officials can't answer these questions, then the public has to really assume the worst. So these are the real questions that we try to answer today. To the question of selling what, to whom, for how long, under what enforcement, and who benefits it. And I think on Friends of the Congo X account today, we posted something that I'm going to read it. And we said, because that's really true, it is vital for Congolese to understand that the priority for the Trump administration is Congo's minerals, not the Congolese people. Because we signed agreements to provide supply chains to the United States. But we see in the United States a crackdown on immigration where Congolese immigrants, just like all other immigrants, are being prevented to even entering in the country. But we know that Congo is not poor because Congo continues to send its resources to the rest of the world. We also know that Congo is not cursed. Congo is one, if not the richest land on earth. And that wealth has been converted into suffering through really a system of violence and extraction that we can trace back to 1884 at the Berlin Conference. So our job at Friends of the Congo, our job at Congo Unfiltered, and your job at just watching this is to expose the system. Your job is to pressure it. And our job is to build a future where Congo's resources produce dignity and not death. So, if you found today's episode valuable for you or interesting, please make sure that you like, subscribe, and share. Follow Friends of the Congo on our different platform on TikTok. We're on TikTok, on Facebook, on X, on YouTube, on Instagram. And we will be back next Saturday at the same time. So have a happy and wonderful Saturday. Peace.